Arthur Stone had built an empire with his bare hands, but at 85, his family thought he was nothing more than a fading memory. To find out the truth about his heirs, he spent 7 days pretending to be completely deaf. He sat in his armchair, a silent shadow, while his children and grandchildren plotted his downfall right in front of him. What he heard in those 7 days didn't just break his heart, it gave him the fuel to rewrite history and take back everything they tried to steal. It started with a cane against marble. The sound snapped through the dining room like a punctuation mark. Plates paused mid-air. Conversation thinned. My grandfather, Arthur Stone, set his cane down and looked at us with steady eyes, eyes that had watched wars, births, and the slow erosion of our family's soul. Then he put his napkin on his lap and went silent. For the next week, he wouldn't say a word, and more importantly, he wouldn't hear a single one. At the table, my father, Robert, smiled with the practiced warmth of a man who already felt the weight of a crown he hadn't earned. He reached across the table and touched my brother Julian's sleeve, the touch of a kingmaker who had picked his successor years ago. Julian laughed, a moist, rehearsed sound. My mother, Beatrice, arranged her pearls like a curtain between her and the reality of our collapsing home. Across from them, I sat very still. I was Evelyn, the quiet one, the daughter who had become an invisible ledger. I did all the work, but none of the credit bore my name. "Well, Evelyn," my father said, loud enough to be heard in the next room, "we're proud of you, no doubt. You keep doing the little things at the office. Leave the big decisions to grown men like Julian. He has the vision for the Stone Group's future." It wasn't a joke. It never was. My cheeks burned with the familiar sting of slow-drip humiliation. The house smelled of expensive perfume and the faint, sweet dust of old money. Arthur's hand rested on the table, but he did nothing to defend me. He let them speak as if his ears had finally failed him. And in that moment, I realized his silence was the only armor he had left. For years, I had been the backbone of the Stone Group. I answered calls at 2 in the morning when suppliers defaulted. I wrote the reports that mapped our real value, even though my father's signature was the only one investors ever saw. My brother was the golden child, a man of charm and hollow promises. My father would hand him his antique pocket watch and say, "One day, Julian, you'll understand how to carry this legacy." To me, he only handed more work. The week of Arthur's silence began without announcement. He moved through the house with measured steps, but he stopped answering questions. He let voices fill the room, letting people over-explain their greed until their guards were down. He became a statue in the parlor, a notebook in his lap, while the family dropped their filters, believing the old man was finally out of the way. "We can't waste more money on those community projects Evelyn started," my mother Beatrice said one afternoon, her voice sharp as a blade. "That's our inheritance she's spending. We need to focus on our lifestyle." My brother Julian nodded, sipping a drink. "Once Grandpa's officially declared incompetent, we'll sell off the manufacturing wing. It's too much overhead. We'll take the cash, move to the coast, and let Evelyn figure out how to tell the workers they're fired. It's not our problem to be sentimental." Against the threshold of the parlor, Arthur remained still. He was recording everything, not just in his mind, but in a small device hidden in the head of his cane. He listened as my father discussed forging Arthur's signature on a new distribution schedule. "The old man won't even know," Robert laughed. "He can't hear the pen scratching the paper anymore." I moved through the house like a ghost, cleaning, straightening, and listening. I felt the danger in every syllable. They weren't just planning to take the company. They were planning to erase me,
to remove every file I had written and every relationship I had nurtured. The week of feigned deafness was an act of mercy, though they didn't know it yet. Arthur could have burned them in public, but he chose method. He chose legal channels, notary seals, and the cold patience of institutional justice. The following Tuesday, Arthur called for a formal dinner. The house smelled of roasting apples and starched linen. Members of the company board were invited, men and women who had built the Stone Group alongside Arthur for 40 years. My father was radiant, thinking this was the night Arthur would finally step down and hand Julian the keys. Arthur cleared his throat. His voice, silent for 7 days, was now a thunderclap. There are things that have been said in this house, and things that have been done in the shadows. I have spent the last week listening, and I have heard more than enough. The room went cold. My father tried to laugh it off. "Dad, you're confused. You haven't heard a word in days." Arthur didn't blink. He slid a thick leather folder across the table to the chairman of the board. "I heard Julian plan to sell the factories. I heard Robert plan to forge my name. And I heard Beatrice complain about the cost of helping the very people who made us rich." He opened the folder. Inside were transcriptions, corroborated by a neutral legal witness he had secretly hired to stay in the guest wing. But the real blow was the last page. In a quiet, irreversible act, Arthur had reallocated the entirety of his voting shares to me. "It's Evelyn's," he said, his voice steady. "The Stone Group is no longer a family playground.
It is a place of business, and she is the CEO. The fallout was clinical. My father's face was a mask of gray ash. My brother's entitlement shattered like glass. The board, presented with recordings and notarized proof of attempted fraud, had no choice. They voted to recognize the transfer immediately. The following weeks were a storm of accountability. My parents didn't go quietly. They tried to smear Arthur's name, suggesting he was senile. They sent anonymous letters to the press, claiming I had manipulated a dying man. But the truth was a fortress. We had the documents, the witnesses, and the integrity that they had long ago traded for vanity. I didn't seek revenge. I didn't throw them into the street. Arthur believed in restoration, not annihilation. They were allowed to keep their personal trust funds, but they were exiled from the company they tried to destroy. The Stone legacy they craved was gone, replaced by a meritocracy they couldn't survive. I rebuilt the Stone Group from the ground up. I didn't wear a crown, I wore a lab coat and a headset. I returned to the factory floor, where the workers, the ones my brother wanted to fire, taught me how to realign the machines and the soul of the business. We started scholarships for the daughters of our employees. We created a mentorship program for women in management. I bear the invisible labor I once did in secret, but now it is the oil that keeps a transparent machine running. Sometimes people ask if Arthur was cruel to deceive his own children. I tell them that the real cruelty was the years they spent trying to erase me while living off my work. Arthur didn't play a trick. He removed a curtain. Arthur is gone now, taken gently by time. But I still hold the last letter he wrote me. It sits in my pocket as I walk into board meetings. It says, "Tend the world well, Evie. You finally have the garden you deserve." I am no longer the girl who measures her worth by crumbs of approval. I am the woman who knows that justice doesn't always come with a shout. Sometimes it comes in the silence of an old man who chose to listen. If you have ever been overlooked or underestimated by the people who were supposed to love you, remember this: your work is seen, even when it's invisible. Truth has a way of finding its voice, and when it does, the whole world will finally have to listen. If Maya's journey from invisible daughter to the head of an empire moved you, don't let her story end here.
Subscribe to Real Compass for more parables of justice and second chances. Click the like button if you believe that character matters more than inheritance. And tell us in the comments, if you could hear what your family says about you in secret, would you want to know? Or is some silence better left unbroken? Thank you for watching, and remember, the most powerful thing you can do is listen. We'll see you in the next story.